Hi, Anders, and welcome.
Thank you.
Well, this nice talk is going to be about breathing and carbon dioxide and what comes up. So, welcome for my Swedish colleague. I'm very happy to invite you for another talk. We had one before, and you also visited Denmark before,
Yes.
etc. So, yeah. So, well, I think also I will kind of invite Sweden and Denmark for this Scandinavian breath talk. So our collaboration between countries is very important for me to work together and spread the word about the breath. So thank you,
Yes.
Anders, for being here. So that is my
Thank you
overview
for
intro.
inviting me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was my overview introduction. So now, Anders, I'll actually ask you to present yourself a little bit more for those who don't know you.
Yeah. And I was thinking maybe we don't have to limit ourselves to Scandinavia, to Sweden and Denmark. I
That's
think since we do this
exactly,
in English.
yeah, that's why I start talking about countries now, because the mission for us together, may if I may call it a mission, is to spread it out to everybody interested. So maybe some new listeners are here today, and maybe some that met us before or followed me or you in a long time.
Yeah.
So Anders,
So
a
yeah, a
little
little
bit
bit
about your
about
background for
me.
the new
Yeah.
listeners.
So I'm the typical entrepreneur, having this entrepreneurial mind. How can you improve things? How can you do things differently? And looking for opportunities. So I started my own company when I was 19, and I imported computers from Taiwan originally, and it was a great adventure. Sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't.
Mm,
And I built an IT company, and then I got bored of it, realized that I didn't grow as a person. I was just focusing on chasing money, and it was really boring
mm,
at the end. So I
mm,
sold it, and then I switched to health. So I started a health company, and one of the first things I did was to start to translate English books about health from English to Swedish.
mm,
And in that process, I discovered breathing, the power of our breath, how our breath can be used as a tool. And for me, it was life changing. It actually changed my life when I started to pay attention to my breathing and change my own breathing habits. So I was hooked, and that was 15 years ago. And ever since, it's been full time focus on breathing. And I'm this nerd. So whenever I get a grip of something, I want to know everything. So I've been digging deep, deep, deep down the rabbit hole, trying to understand what happens in our body when we breathe in different ways, and what happens when we change then our breathing habits.
wow. So what you do comes from your heart. I mean, comes from the inside. That's very nice. I know that feeling. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Anders. So, well, I made a question for you now for a start, which is breathing is
Mhm.
about oxygen. That is common knowledge somehow. When
Yeah.
you breathe because you need oxygen. So oxygen
Yes.
uptake is everything for your cells. Is breathing about carbon dioxide also? That is my first question for you, because
Yeah.
maybe it's not so much about oxygen, but more about carbon dioxide. We need to pay more attention to that part of the breath cycle.
Yes. In my view, and I know I'm quite biased here, but in my view, our society is way too obsessed about oxygen. I can
Mm-hmm.
understand why, because as you said, we take in oxygen when we breathe, and we need the oxygen to produce energy efficiently. That's the reason why we die if we stop breathing. We die of lack of energy, because when we produce energy with oxygen, it is very efficient, because the properties of oxygen, it is very, very reactive. So producing energy is in our body is similar to having a fire burning, and if you want to put out the fire, you remove the oxygen. You put a blanket on the fire, for example, then you can remove the oxygen and the fire dies out. So the same happens in our body, the mitochondria, where most of our energy is produced, they can only work when there is oxygen. So those are called the firehouse, the powerhouses of our cells, where the energy is produced. And it is like those powerhouses, the mitochondria, they are like our fires. And we have so many mitochondria. If we were to remove the water in our body, 10% of our body weight will be mitochondria. And as I said, they can't work without oxygen. So we use the properties of oxygen to produce energy efficiently. But we have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and also include carbon dioxide. How do we get the oxygen to the cells, to these mitochondria? And how do we make sure that this reaction in the mitochondria doesn't go out of hand? Like if you have a fire and you put oxygen on the fire, there will be an explosion because of the reactivity of the oxygen. So that is where carbon dioxide come into play. It's almost like if you think of a nuclear power plant and you have this reaction where the energy is produced, but you also have all these control rods around the nuclear reaction to make sure it doesn't go out of hand. That is one of the properties of carbon dioxide. So oxygen and carbon dioxide, they are like yin and yang. They go hand in hand. So if you produce energy without the protective mechanism that carbon dioxide offers, you will increase the damage on the mitochondria and on the cell. We call that oxidative stress, free radicals, inflammations typically. So our mitochondria is the main source of free radicals, which leads to inflammations. And across the line, almost whichever disease or symptom, health issue, health challenge you're talking about, there is a higher level of inflammations. And the main source is mitochondria. And that is because one main reason, there is always many reasons, of course, but one major reason is that there are lower levels of carbon dioxide. So there is less protective mechanism. So the energy production goes out of hand. So that is one aspect of carbon dioxide. Another aspect, which is also very important in order to produce energy efficiently, that is to make sure that your airways are open, that your blood vessels are open. Otherwise, your body has more power to force the air down into the lungs and to force the blood out into the body. So we have these muscle types, three types in our body: the heart muscle, and then we have our skeletal muscle that we can control by will. And thirdly, we have the smooth muscles, and they are surrounds all these, what you call it, the tubes. We can say that we are, a human being is like a bunch of tubes. We have the airways, the blood vessels, the intestines, etc., etc., and they are all surrounded by smooth muscles. And when these smooth muscles live in an environment which is low in carbon dioxide, they constrict, meaning that it's harder for us to move the air in and out of the lungs. It's harder for the blood to flow into the body. So there will be more work needed. So that means that there will maybe be less oxygen delivered to the mitochondria. So we may have a poorer ability to produce energy efficiently. So there are two aspects then, both that we produce less energy and that we waste more energy. That's like a company that have low income and high cost. That doesn't make sense long term. So in order for the company to improve, you can focus on increasing your income, and you can focus on reducing your cost, or even better, doing both. So that is the effect in the essence that carbon dioxide helps out with, to make this energy production more efficiently, which will then help us to get more out of a state of fight flight, because breathing, obviously we don't survive without breathing. So if our breathing is threatened, if our airways are narrow, we will enter more into a state of fight flight. The body will be under more stress. There will be more adrenaline, and we will spend more of our resources in survival, in growth and expansion. So the net effect of focusing on improving your breathing habits will be that there will be less survival and more consciousness, more expansion. So that's why we call our concept conscious breathing, to
Exactly.
not only be aware of your breathing and breathe more consciously, but also that ultimately it will lead to an expansion in your consciousness, which is, I believe, what evolution is all about. We need to be more aware of the environment around us so that we can make smarter decisions, so that we can increase the chance of survival.
Well-being and a good life. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's so interesting, Anders. Just keep talking. It's so nice hearing this big view on how to get a body that is not that stressed, that is with less inflammation, better energy, etc. I think it's so important. I just got two questions in my head. Can I do one of them
Yeah.
now? Yeah. So one
Yeah.
of them is, what do you think about the increased carbon dioxide in the environment around the Earth? I mean, is that good or bad, or what can we do? And all this talk about carbon dioxide that is so bad, it's so banned.
Yeah.
Where are
Carbon
you?
dioxide is the gas that will make us all die, right? Because
Yeah,
global
that is what
warming.
we hear. I mean, that's what we hear. And then now you're talking about carbon dioxide is so important. I mean, for health.
Yeah, it's a hard sell these days.
It
But
is.
again, if we take a step back and just realize that we humans, the reason why we've been able to populate around the planet like no other species is because, more than anything, I would say our ability to adapt. We can survive in the desert where there is 50 degrees Celsius, and we can survive in Antarctica where it is very cold, or at high altitude, and we can survive on different types of foods. So if we realize this fact that yes, the carbon dioxide levels are increasing, not only in the atmosphere, but also our exposure, because we spend up to 90% of our time indoors, and our house gets more insulated, which means that there will be more carbon dioxide trapped in our houses. For example, in our bedroom, if you lay two people in a normal sized bedroom in the early morning hours, because we are carbon dioxide factories, we produce carbon dioxide all the time, and we exhale about 100 times more than we inhale. So when you have laid there for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours in the bedroom, and maybe you have the door closed and the window closed, the levels of carbon dioxide in that room could be up to 10 times as much as in the normal atmospheric air. Or if you're in a car, or the fact that we get more and more people on less and less space. The big cities just keep on increasing. So if you are 10 people in a meeting room, for example, and you spend a couple of hours there, the levels of CO2 will increase. Or
Yeah.
during COVID, when most people wear a mask, again, they could go up like 10 times. So that's just the understanding that our exposure to carbon dioxide is increasing.
Yes.
So then we have two options. Either we learn to tolerate those increasing levels, or we don't. And if we don't, then we will get in trouble, because it is not lack of oxygen that makes us take the next breath. It is the buildup of carbon dioxide in our body. So when it builds up, it stimulates the brainstem and makes us take the next breath. And then on the following out breath, we will exhale the excess carbon dioxide that has been produced in our body.
Yeah.
So that's another aspect when it comes to our body, to realize that carbon dioxide, it has to be quite important, doesn't it? If it controls our most important function, our breathing. So that means if we go back to the increased exposure, whether it's in the atmosphere, where it is increasing, I think it's a 35 to 40% increase during the last 60 years or so. And then the we spend more time indoors, we have more insulated houses, etc., and we get more people. That means then that if you don't adapt, if you don't learn to tolerate these higher levels, you will end up in a more stressed situation where you will breathe faster. And then at some point, your mouth will come open. You will start to breathe more shallow. So it's a vicious cycle which lock you in a state of fight flight. So it's a bit sometimes problematic for me to explain that. What on the one hand you say carbon dioxide is good, and on the other hand you say it's bad. I think it's all about the dosage. Most people can agree that sitting still is not good. If you sit still 24/7, you need to move. But if you were to go on the gym 24 hours a day, that would be too much stress on the body. And it's similar to our exposure to CO2. So, for example, we tape suggest people to tape their mouth shut at night, which help them to ensure nasal breathing, which will create a slower breathing, which will help to increase the tolerance for CO2. We have this relaxator breath trainer, which you put in your mouth and you prolong the exhale to slow down your breathing. And we have other tools as well to help you to increase the tolerance for CO2. But of course, if you were to use this, for example, 24 hours a day, that would be too much. So whenever we want to improve something, we need to do it gradually. You don't go to the gym, and if you never set your foot there and start with 100 push-ups or whatever, that would be completely crazy, right? We have to go gradually. So that's the key here, understanding that, yes, we are exposed to more CO2. We have to see it as our friend, not as our enemy, and we have to see how can we adapt to it.
I
And
really like
I'm
this
sure
explanation. Yeah.
if I were an alien and come to this planet and looked at humans, what are these people doing? I would probably conclude as an alien that these guys don't need more stress. They don't need more adrenaline. They don't need longer to-do list. They need the opposite. So if you just look at it from oxygen and carbon dioxide perspective, oxygen is activating while carbon dioxide is calming. And it also makes sense if you look at it from a breathing perspective. Inhale where you take in oxygen, that is activating. If you measure your pulse when you inhale, not like I did now, just to make a point here, but still a normal breath on the inhale, you will see that the pulse goes up. The muscles are active to draw the air in, while the exhale is the opposite. If I'm exaggerating again, there is no active muscle movement in a good relaxed breathing, right? It's just collapses to its resting position. And yeah, so it's interesting from many perspective that what we are in the business in helping people find the relaxation so that it's easy for them to switch between activity and recovery. And many people, I would say, that I meet, they are more locked in a state of activity.
Definitely. Yeah. Wow, it's very clear, easy to understand this complex question about carbon dioxide in the environment also. So thank you, Anders. I hope everybody kind of got this this thing going on, that we need to have a friendly relationship to carbon dioxide, because the body really
Yeah.
needs it. We need it in our breathing.
Yeah.
We need it to breathe optimal also. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and then this makes me come to my second question, which came
Yeah.
up from your first talk, is, if I was a listener, I would think, what can I do then with my breathing, and I mean my daily habits, etc. What can I do to help myself increase my carbon dioxide tolerance? Because I mean, if you have a low tolerance of carbon dioxide, you're gonna breathe faster and faster, and
Yes.
more less optimal. I mean, but what can you do to change that, in your point of view, then?
So, in many aspects, awareness is a great starting point. If whatever habit I want to change, so start to pay attention to your daily breathing habits, and most people say that I'm holding my breath whenever I do this and this and that. If
mm,
it's on my mobile, if it's concentrating at work, if I'm in front of the computer, if I'm
mm,
watching an action movie, in many, many different situations. When I'm out driving and I'm at the stoplight and I'm annoyed. So it seems like many of us, we shift between holding our breath, where there is non-existent breathing,
mm,
and then we next second we do fast and shallow breathing
mm,
or irregular breathing.
mm,
So when you start to look at your own breathing patterns, you may find these relationships. You may find that when you're stressed out, your breathing is fast and shallow. When
mm,
you're angry, you may hold your breath. When you're sad, you may have a sad breathing, etc., etc.
mm,
Or when you are talking to a certain person, you breathe in a different way. Or you start to talk faster, which means that you are also breathing faster. So
mm,
that is the first step, to start to pay attention to your breathing.
mm,
And then also realizing that if you want to change the state of your nervous system, the nervous system is
mm,
there to keep us alive. So we have the gas and the brake. The gas
mm,
would be, then it's called a sympathetic. It's also
mm,
called fight and flight and activity. And the opposite is the recovery, which we call parasympathetic, rest and
mm,
digest,
mm,
safe and secure. And the nervous system is there to keep us safe and alive more than
mm,
anything. And for that, we have these two branches, the gas and the brake, and we are supposed to shift between the two.
mm,
And the fact is, as I've illustrated just a while ago, that with every breathing cycle, we affect the nervous system. Inhale takes us to sympathetic activation,
mm,
exhale takes us to relaxation.
mm,
So then we can identify and realize that there are a few breathing habits that are the hallmarks of being in a state of fight flight, being
mm,
more in stress and activity. And it's important to point out that there is nothing wrong, of course,
mm,
of being in a state of stress and
mm,
activity and fight flight. That is absolutely fantastic. But the problem in our modern society is that we are there too often, too
mm,
long, and we don't have the tools to get out of that state. So typically, your breathing that reflects being in a state of fight flight is through the mouth, fast,
mm,
shallow, holding your breath. It's noisy, labored, maybe where you see very visually how the shoulders may go up, the upper chest goes up out very much, and it's tense. You can see the person is tense.
yeah. And
So
that
if
create,
you
yeah.
want to change, no, please go ahead.
No, no. Yeah, I just wanted to sum up. So that creates a low tolerance for carbon dioxide.
It does create a low tolerance for carbon dioxide.
Exactly.
It does
Yeah.
create tense muscles
Mm,
and inefficient oxygenation. It does
mm,
create a
mm,
state where you spend more of your resources in
mm,
fight flight. So if you want to change that state and realize that you can perform and do most of the things you want
mm,
without needing to be in a state of
mm,
stress and fight flight, well, then one of the greatest tool is to actually change your breathing and just do the opposite of what I just described, which
mm,
means closing your mouth and breathing low using your diaphragm, and
mm,
slow and rhythmically and quiet and relaxed. And what we have found, one of the easiest way to achieve just that is to just close your mouth and prolong your exhale. That will help you
mm,
to slow down your breathing and activate
mm,
your diaphragm and create this rhythmic, relaxed breathing.
mm, mm. Fantastic, Anders. So you know much of my work about freeing up the
Yeah,
breath and I love the 3D breath. That's the way I pronounce it. That the breath is not on only in one dimension. It's in three dimensions. And so, how do you see the connection between our breath mechanics? I mean, our 3D breath that needs some mechanics going on, some movement inside and outside in the body. How do you see the connection between this and carbon dioxide?
yeah, that is interesting because if you have, For example, if you have this slumped posture, many people have, whether they're checking their mobile or working in front of a computer or sitting in the sofa,
Mm.
what happens then is that your mechanics will be affected, right? Your
Mm.
muscles will, they will create tensions. You will not use your body as it is supposed to. The diaphragm that is supposed to do most of the work in moving the air in and out of the lungs,
Mm.
it's hard for the diaphragm to work when you sit like a sack of potato. Over time, that will uh, other muscles need to step in, and they will then get tense and overworked. And there are so many muscles surrounding the lungs, right? And in our day-to-day life, if we have this slumped posture or if we have stress and tensions, these muscles will start to inhibit
Mm.
a full breath,
Mm.
which will then force the air higher up in the chest. This
Mm.
inefficient breathing, because higher up in the lungs, there are less alveoli where that's where the gas exchange takes place. The oxygen we inhale, the carbon dioxide produced in our body needs to travel the oxygen from the lungs to the blood and the carbon
Mm.
dioxide from the blood to the lungs. And that happens in the alveoli. And most of them are situated in the lower parts of the lungs.
Mm.
And there are also more blood, 10 times more blood is flowing in the lower parts of the lungs compared to the upper parts. So
Mm. Mm.
when we are changing our dynamics, our muscle starts to work poorer. That will affect the breathing, and ultimately, then what happens when you're breathing more inefficient in the upper part of the chest? Your body needs to compensate. It's like
Mm.
driving your car and then having
Mm.
one foot on the brake, and
Mm.
you don't have the tools to remove the foot from the brake, so you just push harder on the gas pedal.
Mm.
Everyone can see that it's not the way to do it, but that's how we do it. So the high chest breathing will lead to faster breathing.
Yes.
So the mechanics will then lead to the poor breathing mechanics will lead to faster breathing, which over time then will lead to lower tolerance for CO2. So they really go hand in hand. You can
Exactly.
work on your improving your CO2 tolerance
Mm.
by working on your breathing mechanics, open up your
Mm.
airways, reduce the tensions in the muscles so that it's freer, it's easier for the blood to
Mm.
flow, for the air to flow in and out of the
Mm.
lungs. And that will then help increase the CO2 tolerance, and vice
Mm.
versa as well. When you
Mm.
increase the CO2 tolerance, your muscles will start to relax. You will start
Mm.
to reactivate your diaphragm, and that will help mechanics as well. So they really go hand in hand. It's
Mm.
not either or. Like in
Mm.
any case, I would say,
Mm.
it's all
Definitely.
about the balance. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. And when you talk about exhalations, that is very important for the breath overall, but also for carbon, for tolerance and balance and
yeah,
etc. When you talk about exhalation, then I love always to mention that when your mechanics are not working optimal, when you're too stiff in the rib cage and the diaphragm doesn't move exactly like it's supposed to do, then it can't move up into
yeah,
the chest and the lungs can't go back into the resting position, etc. So you will not be able, I mean, biomechanically or physical, to exhale. So many people think that exhalation is about deciding with your brain and it's a cognitive task to exhale. You can count or you can do whatever you want. But in my point of view, also being able to exhale optimal and fully and then do
yeah,
another good inhale, you need a good biomechanical body. I mean, you need good function of your rib cage, of your diaphragm, of your back, and of all of the tissue
yeah,
surrounding the lungs and the diaphragm. So, yeah, I just
yes.
want to add that
And
on. Mm.
that is so interesting as well, because what we can see is that the more stress you have, the
Mm.
shorter your exhale will be. So, for example, if I'm out running,
Mm.
I did a test a while ago. I was running for 5 kilometers,
Mm-hmm.
and then the last kilometer, I decided to sprint as much as I could. So during the first 5 kilometers, I had typically 3 steps on the inhale and 4 steps on the exhale.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I did the last kilometer of sprinting, What reduced first was the ability to out breath. First, it was 3 steps on the inhale and then 3 steps on the out breath. And then 3 in, 2 out, and then 2 in, 2 out, and then 2 in, 1 out, till I almost reached the finishing line and sprinted as fast as I can. It was 1 in and 1 out. But
Yeah.
my point is that exhale is tied to relaxation, and the exhale is really, really important. So when we put more stress on the body, there will be a shorter exhale. And we also should bear in mind that we work against gravity. The pressure that gravity puts on our respiratory system forces us actually to exhale fast. That is quite a lot of pressure. So we're working against gravity. And also, another aspect when it comes to exhale is the construction of the lungs. There are 80% water in the lungs. That's
Wow.
huge.
Wow.
It's like a sponge. So if you look at the lungs of a smoker, there is not so much water in the lungs. So on the exhale, the lungs just collapse.
Wow.
But if
No
you have enough
elasticity. Yeah.
water, yeah, exactly. If you have a lot of water in the lungs, which is supposed to, there is this elasticity, so that you will have a longer relaxed exhale. So there are
Oh,
so many aspects
really?
working together here. And if we just consider the fact that, we live in Scandinavia, so in the winters it gets cold, and you can see when it's minus the winter breath. And the winter breath, that is like a cloud that consists of water and heat. And if you do that through the mouth, there will be a big cloud. If you do that through the nose, there will be almost no cloud at all. And that's because Swedish studies show that we exhale 43% more water when we exhale through the mouth compared to the nose, which means
Wow.
that we lower the levels of water in the lungs, which means the lungs will start to have less elasticity.
Yeah. Wow. It's so amazing talking about all this, because everything
Yeah.
goes together. I mean, everything makes sense somehow. Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting, Anders. Well, talking about carbon dioxide, I'm very much into this carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
So I'm also interested in talking about your new entrepreneur work. I think I would say that it's not new, but for most people, it's very new. So, I mean, you made computers years back, as you said
Yeah. Yeah.
in the introduction. Now I think you make carbon dioxide treatment possibilities, not only from your breathing, of course, that is the main thing you're doing 24/7, and that's the very much important part you take care of. But also you are working with something in the way you can absorb carbon dioxide through the skin, and you're even doing something you can inhale carbon dioxide. And to many
Yeah.
people, that really is nonsense talk. So can you clear this up for a little bit up for us and the listeners? Why are you doing this, and what can we use it for?
Yeah. So the product where you absorb carbon dioxide through the skin, it's called the Body Stream CO2 bath. It's a dry bath. So you put on a suit like a diving suit, and then you fill it up with 100% carbon dioxide. And you lay in it for maybe 45 minutes, and you absorb the CO2 through the skin. And the response from the body is more open airways, more open blood vessels, and we call it a parasympathetic deluxe experience, where you really feel relaxed. And this idea, it comes from the fact that many people feel relaxed when they take a bath in a hot spring. And the healing effects of hot springs has been around for hundreds of years, probably thousands of years. You go to a hot spring in order to improve aspects of your life, like reduce stress or improve circulation or improve the quality of your skin. And what they have seen, because not everyone has a hot spring in their backyard, right? So how can we get this to more people? And what they have seen is that the main active ingredient is carbon dioxide. There are high levels of carbon dioxide in these hot
Oh.
springs. So that's
Mm.
where the concept of the body stream comes from.
Mm.
The idea that carbon dioxide has healing properties. How can we bring it to the
Mm.
person that doesn't have access to a hot spring?
Mm.
And what we see over and over and over again is that people get very relaxed while
Mm.
using this
Mm.
suit. They many fall asleep, and
Mm.
that is what we need help with.
Mm.
At the end of the day, I would say we don't need any tools or gadgets to improve our breathing. We can just go to our breathing and slow it down
Mm.
without any devices or anything.
Mm.
But the thing is that many of us, we don't have the time, we don't want to prioritize it, we want the quick fix, etc. So that's why we have developed these little tools to help the modern
Mm.
man
Definitely.
increase their ability to relax
Mm.
in their daily lives.
I'm a
So
big fan. Just to let you know, I'm a big fan of the body stream. So you already know that, but I want to let the
yeah,
listeners know. But and personally, and with the people around me, I heard about faster recovery, less inflammation, faster getting getting over inflammation. Not faster, but
pain reduction.
pain reduction. Yeah, and brain brain and energy optimization, etc. Yeah.
Yeah,
And better sleep, of course, also. So some of the
that
things
is key.
I heard about now. So I just stopped you talking, Anders, but my
No,
motivation
I think I was
came.
done there with the body stream, but yeah, we are the conscious breathing and carbon dioxide therapy
Mm.
company, spreading the world about the importance of breathing and
Mm.
the neglected villain, almost carbon dioxide, that
Mm.
actually try to change that narrative and
Mm.
make people understand that
Mm.
it's usually not about good or bad. It's about
Mm.
balance. So
Mm.
it can't be that oxygen is just the good and carbon dioxide is the bad.
Mm.
It's about balance.
So, Anders, just to let people know that this is not new science, that carbon dioxide is good for the
No,
human body. I mean, as far as I know, there was a book published in the 1905 or something. Am I wrong or right
no,
about?
exactly. That was
Yeah.
1905.
Hmm.
Carbon dioxide in medicine. I have, or we
Exactly.
have republished it on Amazon, so you can go
Mm.
ahead and
Mm.
order it in Kindle version and read
Mm.
it.
Yeah. So it's
It's
not
very
dangerous.
interesting. And
It's
when he
nothing.
wrote, oh no, I mean he when he wrote the book, Dr. Achilles Rose was his
Mm.
name. He lived in the
Mm.
U.S. So when he wrote it in 1905, he summarized a lot of the work that had happened many years ago as well. So it was already an ongoing therapy.
Mm.
And there is actually another book that I've also republished on Amazon, which came out in 1794, where that was an English doctor. He treated two patients with ulcerated breast cancer, meaning open wounds in the
Mm.
breast,
Mm.
with carbon dioxide therapy. And he said in the book, without exception, every time we applied carbon dioxide, they put it like a container over the
Mm.
breast. Every time the pain disappeared. And then when we removed it, it gradually came back. And one of these two patients, she had such a big wound
Mm.
that she was screaming up to 2 hours per day just because
Mm.
of the pain.
Mm.
And it was 15 by 10 centimeters big or something like that. And
Wow.
after a month, it has shrunken to less than a third
Mm.
just by applying CO2. So
Mm.
there
Mm.
are some really healing properties
Mm.
of CO2. And yes, as you mentioned, the science is there backing this up.
Yeah.
But in mainstream, we don't know about this. So when you
No.
look at the science, you see that there are so many important properties. And if you come from the perspective of these smooth muscles,
Mm.
and that they go into constriction when they live in an environment that is low of CO2, and you realize that asthma, there we have tight airways, right? We
Mm.
also call that bronchoconstriction,
Mm.
so, which is basically cramp in the airways. It's the smooth muscles that goes into cramp. when they have low levels of CO2. When you have blood vessels, you have problems with, we call it angina pectoris, which is cramp in the blood vessels. When you have stomach pain, you have cramp in the stomach or the intestines. Women having PMS issues, that is cramp in the womb. And all of these coincides with low levels of carbon dioxide. You can almost say when you have cramp in the brain, that could be likened to an epileptic seizure.
Yeah.
And there have seen in studies when you inhale extra carbon dioxide, you will the epileptic seizures will go away very, very fast. So that is the other product you mentioned that we have, where you inhale a little extra carbon dioxide. You add a little CO2 to the air you inhale. So typically we inhale in the atmospheric air about 400 ppm, 0.04. When you're indoors, when you're wearing a mask, as we talked about before, when you're in the car, the levels you inhale is typically 2, 3, 4, up to 10 times as much. When you use the carbohaler, you inhale maybe 50 to 100 times as much as you normally do. But you just do it for a session for 3, 4 minutes. And we have noticed several interesting things here. And again, it's backed by science. It's used to, in medical terms, it's called isocapnic hyperpnea, which basically means that you induce hyperventilation, but without the negative effects you get of normal hyperventilation, which means forceful breathing where you lower the levels of CO2. But when you do forceful breathing while at the same time inhaling extra CO2, you don't get the restricted airways, you don't get the restricted blood vessels, you don't get the increased levels of adrenaline and increased stress. Instead, you can stay calm and then reap the benefits of the hyperventilation. So they have used it when in alcohol intoxication to sober up faster. Basically, you can say that the liver is there to take care of the alcohol you drink, but if it gets overloaded, it wants to recruit the lungs to help out. That's why we can measure alcohol in the outbreath. The police can stop you when you're driving and check if you have drinking alcohol. So if we drink too much, we will start to breathe faster, because then there will be more of the blood circulating through the lungs, and then we can breathe out some of the alcohol. And it's also being used then with great success when you have been poisoned. If there is a fire in your house and there is a lot of smoke, you get exposed to a lot of carbon monoxide, which will replace the oxygen in your hemoglobin in your blood. So you may die of lack of oxygen. So you want to get rid of the carbon monoxide, not dioxide, carbon monoxide, which is a poison, as soon as possible. And again, you can do that very efficiently by doing controlled hyperventilation, by inhaling a little extra carbon dioxide. It's
This
also
is,
used,
yeah.
yeah, when you have been anesthetized, going through a surgery, and after the surgery you wake up and you want to get rid of the anesthetizing agent, or whatever it's called, the thing you have inhaled that you helps you to lose your consciousness. So then you want to get it out of your system as soon as possible to speed up your recovery. Again, you can do that by inhaling extra carbon dioxide. So
So
yeah, please,
amazing.
you wanted to say.
No, it's so amazing. It's just because it came to me that these years there's an increased number of people that comes to the hospital, the acute area of the hospital, because they have too high level of carbon dioxide in their system. Typically, people with chronic obstruction disorders
COPD.
and COPD, etc. But and I mean, it's typically those. But there's an increased number I hear around that has that problem. I mean, so they just came to me now because that is a kind of they are toxic somehow, But
Yes.
what you talk about here also is that the carbon dioxide might help them.
Yes. I haven't worked with people with COPD with
No.
inhaling extra CO2, so I don't know about that. But what I do know is that many people have used this, the relaxator,
Mm.
successfully
Mm.
to help with COPD.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
when you have too much, again, it's about balance, right? We're talking about the
Mm.
balance between
Mm.
oxygen and carbon dioxide. So many of us have too little carbon dioxide, but of course, you can also have too much. So
Mm.
typically in COPD, your airways are damaged, so you
Mm.
can't get the CO2 out of your system.
Exactly.
But
So
when you
you're
use the
poisoned
relaxation,
somehow. Yeah.
yeah, then it becomes a poison. If it's too
Exactly.
much CO2 in the
Mm.
system, yeah,
Mm.
because then we're out of balance. So
Mm.
when you use the relaxator, or you can also use a straw, breathe out through a
Mm.
straw or through
Mm.
pursed lips.
Mm.
When you do that, you increase the pressure in the lungs. And when you do, you open up the alveoli, you open up the airways, and there
Exactly.
that can help you to get rid of the excess CO2.
Mm. Exactly. And
Yeah.
thank you for saying that, because also, well, from my favorite view also, I would like to add on that working, of course, with the slower breathing and expansion of the lungs, etc., but also thinking about mobilizing the rib cage. I mean, mobilizing the lungs, making it everything more elastic, working with the fascia,
Mm.
working with the three-dimensional breath, etc. So this will make the mechanics work just a little bit better. And when the mechanics works better, the diaphragm can move and the lungs can
Mhm.
move a little bit better, even though you have damaged lungs. I mean, then it's going to
Yes.
help you a lot. So I love the relaxator also. So it's a very
Yeah.
important tool
We,
into that work also. Yeah.
we have a fantastic testimonial actually from a guy in Denmark, Axel, 87 years,
Mm-hmm.
who had COPD.
Mm-hmm.
So he had problems getting rid of his carbon dioxide in his body.
Exactly.
He
Yeah.
had too much.
Mm-hmm.
His lung function was 22%. He had been a smoker since he was 17. So for 70 years, smoking a lot, and he could barely do anything. They were about to install an elevator in his home so that he could go up to
Mm-hmm.
the second floor of the house. And he started using the relaxator. His lung function was 22%. 1 year later, he used it almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
1 year later, his lung function was almost 50%. And remember, he was 87, so it's never too late.
No.
And the elevator, they didn't need, they could cancel it after just a few weeks of practicing. And he did not stop smoking. So
Wow,
can you
that's
imagine
crazy.
that,
That's
that
crazy.
level of healing? Yeah.
Wow.
So that's important to install in every one of us. I
Mm.
think that our body is just amazing at
Mm.
repair and regenerate and heal if we give it the right circumstances
Mm. Mm. Wow,
at
Anders, yes.
any age.
Wow, now talking about COPD, I would just in the end of our talk now, I would like to get back somehow to the sports people. Because
Yeah.
many people, many sports people around, I mean, runners or professional football, tennis, whatever, I mean, every sport on every level want to be
Mm.
better, want to recover faster, want to be stronger and more concentrated, more balanced, etc., more power. So just to sum up a little bit on how can it be so important to close your mouth, breathe through your nose, higher your carbon dioxide level and balance your breathing, and maybe add some carbon dioxide from the body stream or the carbohydrate. Why can it be so beneficial for those? If you should just tell them now, I mean, tell them why they should work with these people, with this we're talking about.
I think they should do it to improve their recovery. A
Mm.
lot of athletes, they are world champions when it comes to training, but when it comes to recovery, they are far from it. They don't have the tools, they don't know how to
Exactly.
do it. And that is a way to use the body stream to help you calm
Mm.
down
Mm.
faster
Mm.
or just closing your mouth after exertion, prolonging the exhale, could be used very, very efficiently. If you're a football player, you don't run at your full speed all the time, right? You have many times when you actually walk or just jog slowly, you can easily turn to nasal breathing if you become aware of it and train up that practice. If you're a handball player and you come to the substitute bench, you don't need to be in fight flight. You should optimize your recovery, and your breath is fantastic to use there. And the carbohydrate, when you inhale extra carbon dioxide, it seems like it also helps your performance. We have seen both with me and with other people that they get stronger, for example. I think there are two mechanisms at play. Many people, when they inhale extra carbon dioxide, they notice that the nose feels freer, the throat open up, and it's easier for them to take a full breath. So since carbon dioxide opens up the airways and the blood vessels, that leads to more efficient oxygenation. So I think that is one aspect. And the other
Definitely.
aspect is that the nose is in direct contact with our brain. It's the only of our senses that deliver unfiltered information to the brain. Because of our senses, our nose is the one that was first developed millions of years ago, whenever it was. And it makes sense that smelling the food as probably and avoiding toxic food and searching for nutritious food has been the most important sense. And then we have evolved other important senses. But the point is that our nose is very, very important. Studies shows that we even choose our partner with the smell. The smell is
Interesting.
quite amazing. So anyway, the nose is connected to the brain, and when you then inhale extra carbon dioxide, specifically the nose is connected to the amygdala, our fear center, our worry center, our stress center, and also the hippocampus, our learning center. So when we expose the amygdala to extra CO2, we put the amygdala under stress. We challenged it, and it seems like it, if we give it the right dosage, which for some people may be very little during a very short period of time, and then you increase it gradually, the survival programs we all carry around that actually doesn't serve us well, that doesn't really reflect the reality. We are afraid of this and that and worry about that we don't need to be afraid of. We don't need to worry about it. That consumes a huge amount of energy. And when you then recode these survival program, it's like you inhale extra CO2, you go and dig in the red coded survival program box, and you see, oh my God, this is overfull. And then you take them up and see, oh, this doesn't need to be red coded. And then you can recode it, put a green label, and put it in the safe and secure box. And when you do that, the body will have more resources. So for me, I could only do 49 push-ups before I started with the carbohaler. And my nervous system told me that, right? Okay, this guy, he has the resources to do 49 push-ups. We can't let him do any more. And then I started using carbohaler. Now I can do 75. That's a
Wow.
lot more.
Yeah, it is.
And and I think that one reason is because when my nervous system that wants to keep me safe, wants to make sure I'm alive and don't put myself in unnecessary danger, it does that by looking at my resources and realizing, wow, there's quite a lot of resources here. Let him do 75. It's not that I'm exercising more. It's not that I have bigger muscles than before. I think to a large extent, it's about these two factors:
Definitely.
improved or efficient oxygenation and less waste of energy because of stress and fear and worry and all of that.
Thank you. Clear explanation, Anders. I love that. Yeah. So it's not to say that it's only for sports people. I mean, it is for everybody. And actually, I don't like myself
Yeah.
saying it like. I mean, I don't like myself saying this is for everybody, but I really think it is, because it can sound a little bit not serious. I mean, too much, but I really think it is so beneficial for everybody. Yeah. it is to breathe, we know, but also to work with this treatment or this adding on through the skin or through the mouth, the carbon dioxide. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So when we look at our life and see that it's our habits that control our life to a large
Mm,
extent, we have sleeping
mm,
habits, eating
mm,
habits, drinking habits, thinking habits.
mhm,
But the number one habit is actually the
mm,
breathing. So
mm,
that sets the stage for our other habits. And
mm,
we can view it as a tool that we
mm,
can tap into and then help to change the habits that doesn't serve us and
mm.
improve the habits that we want to keep.
Well, I hope this has been just as enjoying for the listeners as it was for me, Anders. I love to talk about this and listen to your fantastic, well, easy to understand explanations. Even though I know some of you listening may think, well, I didn't get that and that because it's new for me, talking so much about carbon dioxide, etc. But listen to the talk again, and maybe you get it more in the next time. But it won't be the last time we're going to talk about carbon dioxide. You're going to see it everywhere around. It's already out there. So I'm sure you'll get back to it again. Anders, do you want to say
Yeah,
something?
yes, I want to add that the work you are doing is so fantastic, and that I'm so happy to collaborate with you, and that it goes so much hand in hand
Thank you,
with what
Anders.
we are doing. They
Mm,
really complement and feed
mm,
each other. So
mm,
the breathing mechanics is super important, of course.
mm. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
mentioning that. Yeah, I love it too. So thank you for your time and energy, Anders. So and thank you for listening, all of you.